The Refounding Christianity project. And Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, See ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. Matthew 24, verses 1 and 2. Jesus is speaking of the buildings of the temple that were brought down in 70 A.D., exposing the foundation. But he is also speaking of the destruction of the doctrines of the church, whose foundation of false teachings is being exposed in what is the seventh day. The project was founded in the spring of 2010 for the purpose of sharing teachings that reestablish the true foundation, laid through the spiritual teachings of Jesus the Christ, which was buried by 460. But 1,500 years later, in 1960, the true foundation was reestablished through a 14-year-long revelation that exposed the errors in the doctrines of Christianity. Introduced to this foundational knowledge in the summer of 1975, I immersed myself in an in-depth 19-year-long study, knowledge that was further spiritualized through a 7-year-long revelation I received between 1998 and 2005. 40 years of teachings, which I have compiled into 2 books. This is not about starting a new religion. It's about restoring the spiritual teachings encoded in the Old and New Testament. Religion is about ritual. Spirituality is about the restoration of that spiritual power called Christ, a power that has been lying dormant in the spiritual womb of man for thousands of years. The restoration of this spiritual power was the message of Jesus, the first to finish the spiritual works of a spiritual creation through the Christ power, which is why he was called the Christ. It is upon the divine principles of true Christianity that America was founded, the two inherently linked. Christianity means pertaining to and expressing the state, condition, or quality of Christ. Christianity as it stands today does not pertain to Christ, nor does it express the state, condition, or quality of Christ. The project was greatly inspired by Glenn Beck's Refounding America movement. That is when I began to see that Christianity, like America, was founded upon a true foundation, but that down through history, the foundation of spiritual Christianity was covered over, replaced with the foundation of religious Christianity, a false foundation built brick upon brick, lie upon lie, using what the Bible calls untempered mortar. The idea for the project came in the spring of 2010, but the seed by which it was conceived was sown in 1960. 50 years. Every 50 years, the Israelites celebrated what is called Jubilee, a time when slaves were set free and alienated land was restored to its former owners. That is the purpose of this knowledge, to help us to understand that we have all become slaves to false beliefs, the land, in spiritual terms, being the promised land, symbolizing the good life promised to us by God, which was ours to begin with, but which we alienated ourselves from when we accepted the false beliefs that enslave us. Mankind's spiritual jubilee is upon us, a time when we are to restore the spiritual power that retrieves us out of the land of bondage and delivers us into the land of freedom. The Declaration of Independence, along with the Constitution, is the foundation upon which this great country was built. It is the true foundation, keeping us free for over 200 years, just as the true foundation of Christianity, laid through the spiritual teachings of Jesus 2,000 years ago, brought spiritual freedom to those that live them. But both our governmental and spiritual foundations have been severely compromised, corrupted by those seeking an unholy power through the governmental and religious systems. It is a self-serving power generated through monetary and spiritual greed, signs pointing to man's lack of holy spiritual power. It is essential that we reestablish the true foundation of America and Christianity, which are inherently linked through the spiritual principles upon which both were originally founded. The first revelation exposed the error in the Christian religion, but it also exposed the destructive powers at work in government. Teachings of a worldwide government with 10 powers scattered throughout the world working toward that end. Of the Rothschild family, whose plan for controlling the world is encoded in the 4 horsemen in the book of Revelation. The teacher referred to this group as the international bankers, who became such by employing this 15th century pawnbroker concept internationally, through which they financed wars, controlling who won and who lost, becoming the political puppeteers through the corruptible power of money. The teachings went into the details of how this government would operate, how it would literally control every aspect of our life, to the extent that we would no longer be able to move about freely, needing papers to go from place to place, even being confined to the limitations of our own zip code when this government reached its most oppressive state. How it would go as far as to dictate what took place in our own homes. This type of oppression, although recorded in history less than 2 decades earlier in Europe, must have seemed unfathomable in 1960. I could barely wrap my head around it in 1975. The first revelation also served to expose the powers at work in religion. The false religious image, along with the government that supports it, encoded in the book of Daniel. The gold, silver, and brass symbolizing the 3 Christian religions that are unwittingly giving power through the strength of the iron, symbolizing the government, to a sanctioned religion whose oppressive belief will match that of its governmental counterpart. Those that did not bow down to the image in the book of Daniel were put to death, prophesying of the oppressive belief, the type and shadow of which appeared in Europe 70 years ago, which is the first beast. The second beast will exercise the same power, Revelation 13:12. Its negative and destructive energy is manifesting without to show us what has already taken place within, which is revealed to us through an understanding of biblical symbolism, the reason for the second revelation. Through this spiritual knowledge, the reestablishing of the true foundation was completed, knowledge that is lacking in those that claim to be God's people, as was spoken by the prophet Hosea. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Hosea 4:6. If the nations and the people they govern would return to spiritual truth, the words spoken by the prophets would become a reality. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. Isaiah 2:4 and Micah 4:3. It is time to beat our swords into plowshares, unearthing the lies responsible for war, preparing the earth, symbolizing the heart, for the sowing of the good seed, which is truth. It is through the revelation of the symbolic code that the spiritual teachings of Jesus could be raised up, a new revelation for a new era, sealed in its entirety for over 3,500 years, the final seal broken in what is the final era of Jacob in the time of Reformation. Jacob symbolizes spirit, and an era of spiritual awakening, coinciding with the unlocking of the Bible's third and final code. If we as nations and individuals will combine the spiritual knowledge and understanding revealed through the symbolism of our ancient sacred text with the wisdom of spiritual works, we will activate the spiritual healing power that will profoundly change our lives and bring peace to a world wrought with chaos and confusion. Through the symbolic code, we are able to decipher the spiritual meaning and life-saving message behind the troublesome events taking place in the world. Through an understanding of the symbolism of the stories of the Bible, we learn what caused the fall of this spiritual power, the age at which it began its decline within us, and the age at which the process that restores it should begin. That process is encoded in the book of Genesis, which means creation. The Bible, which takes place within us, begins with the creation of heaven and earth and ends with the creation of a new heaven and earth. The time of Reformation being the period of time in which this new creation is formed within us, through which the holy power of our heart is restored to the pure state in which we received it at birth. The previous era of Isaac, which began 2,000 years ago, gave birth to 2 ways, symbolized by the birth of Isaac's 2 sons, Esau and Jacob. The carnal taxation that took place 2,000 years ago symbolizes the spiritual taxation we are faced with today, which is to make a choice. Will we choose Esau, which is to choose bondage, or will we choose Jacob, which is to choose freedom? It is truth that makes us free, and where we must establish truth speedily is in government and religion. The collapse of these 2 systems through the resurrection of truth is encoded in the book of Daniel, where the stone, symbolizing truth, smote the feet of the great image, whose toes were of iron and clay, as it is written, For as much as thou sawest the iron mixed with the miry clay. Daniel 2:41. The clay symbolizes the religion. The iron symbolizes the government that supports it. The government has always stood in support of religion, as the iron gives strength to the clay. If both systems stood for truth, the union would not be a detriment, but they do not. Christianity, as it stands today, has very little truth, 2/11 to be exact, encoded in the book of Judges, where 200 of the 1,100 shekels were used to form the graven image, symbolizing the man-made religious image. The government supports the church financially by not requiring the church to pay taxes. The congregation supports the graven image, formed by the church, by paying 10% of their income to the church. Our founding fathers, who laid the foundation of our great country through divine inspiration, were given insight into the danger of this union between government and religion. Thomas Jefferson is credited for the phrase, "wall of separation between church and state," as it is written, "But they shall not cleave one to another, even as the iron is not mixed with clay." Daniel 2:43. Jefferson's wall of separation became part of the First Amendment to the Constitution for our protection, which is what a wall does. The Founding Fathers saw the danger in the two being of one, should one or both become corrupt, as they have. Without the financial support of the government through tax-exempt laws, and the people due to reduction in tithing in these difficult times, and to the fact that more and more people are waking up to the error in the church, as we know it, will soon be out of business, as it is written, "And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise any more." Revelation 18:11. A merchant is one who buys and sells. The priest or pastor attends seminary where he buys into the religious doctrine. Then he gets a church, a physical house of the Lord, where he sells the false doctrine or image to his congregation. Jesus was incensed by this custom of buying and selling in the temple, overturning the tables upon which the false images had been placed, saying, "Make not my Father's house a house of merchandise." John 2:16. The image seen by the king of Babylon in a dream had 10 toes, part of iron and part of clay, showing the mixing and mingling of government and religion. The 10 toes symbolize 10 powers, which rule us from without. Like the 10 horns, which are 10 kings, they have united for one purpose, to give power to the beast, as it is written, "These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast." Revelation 17:13. The 10 toes also represent 10 powers that rule us from within, revealed to us through the first 10 sons of Jacob, those born of Leah and the bondmaids, symbolizing flesh and bondage. If we do not overcome them as spiritual nations, we are destined to serve them as physical nations, which have been united to form one world government with a sanctioned religion. By exposing the lies in government and religion, we will stop the negative and destructive energy that is at work in these systems, both of which are giving power to the new system, whose spirit of oppression will exceed any government that has come before it. Through the resurrection of truth, we will restore the foundation upon which America and Christianity were built, ensuring our physical and spiritual freedom. We are all aware of the far left and far right in governmental politics, but are we aware of the far left and far right in religion? I began seeing parallels between the two beliefs, those of old age or mainstream Christianity and those of New Age Christianity. Those of the old age were claiming to be born again and saved. Those of the New Age were saying the same thing in a different language, claiming they were already spirit and perfected. They just had to remember it and believe it. While one group claimed to have the Holy Spirit, which is to say you have the power of God, the other group claimed they were God, and both groups showed little respect for the earth, the one waiting to be whisked away in what they call the rapture, escaping the evil literally. The other calling the earth experience just a dream, an illusion, escaping its evil through the power of their mind, denying that evil even exists, calling anything that can be seen as negative and destructive, such as disease, an illusion. After seeing these parallels, I asked before going to sleep one night, "Lord, why the parallels between these two groups of people?" I awoke to the words, It's the 2 gold calves the king of Israel set up in Dan and Bethel. It's the same image, an old religious belief wrapped in a New Age wrapping. These 2 groups oppose one another, yet their beliefs are one and the same, existing at each end of a linear line. Bringing the 2 ends together through their parallels shows us that they are at the same point or place, their beliefs powered by what the Bible calls the energy of delusion. This energy provides one with a false sense of peace, the same spirit working in our government, trying to make us believe that everything is okay by borrowing more and more money, taking us deeper and deeper into debt. America has gone into debt by outsourcing its labor. Christianity, through its false doctrine, has caused its followers to go into spiritual debt by teaching them that Jesus paid the price for their sins through his death, by believing that Jesus did the works for them, which is the outsourcing of labor on a spiritual level. The truth is, we will have to do the physical and spiritual works necessary to satisfy our financial and spiritual debt if we want to be free. But there is a spirit of laziness that has settled over the people, generated in part by this false belief accepted by the far left and the far right of Christianity. There are 2 foundations of Christianity, the foundation of spiritual Christianity and the foundation of religious Christianity. Spiritual Christianity was founded upon the spiritual teachings of Jesus, which was covered over by 460 AD. Religious Christianity was founded upon the carnal-minded teachings of Paul, its foundation laid in 325 AD by a council of governmental and religious leaders, the mixing of iron and clay. It is important to understand that America was founded upon spiritual principles, not upon the religion of Christianity. Saul and David represent the 2 foundations, which is why the kingdom was rent from Saul and given to David. How Saul rules over Israel, 1 Samuel 8, verses 11 through 17, shows us how the church rules over its people. Saul took the 10th of the sheep symbolizing the flock or congregation, from which the church takes a 10th through tithing. Saul took the men and put them to work for his own interests. He took their daughters and put them to work as cooks and bakers. Everyone became a servant to Saul, as the people have become a servant to organized religion, getting nothing in return but lies and false hope. David was not permitted to build a house for the Lord because David is associated with Jesus, who taught on the building of a spiritual temple, the reign of David being the type and shadow of the Messianic reign, when Jesus brought the spiritual teachings that in practice fulfilled the carnal law. The reign of David gave way to the reign of Solomon, as the reign of spiritual Christianity gave way to the reign of religious Christianity. The physical house of the Lord that Solomon built is synonymous with the churches that were built after Jesus' time, built upon the teachings of the Saul of the New Testament, called Paul. As Saul, he put spiritual Christians to death. As Paul, he mixed carnal law with spiritual truth, causing the confusion that has brought death to Christians on a soul level. 2 foundations have been laid. The foundation of 12, upon which the spiritual city of Jerusalem is built, and the foundation of 1, upon which the spiritual city of Babylon is built. The word Babylon means confusion, which is why we have so many Christian religions, all built upon the teachings of Paul, an inferior foundation which, made of sand, will not stand. Deconstruction of the inferior foundation takes place by exposing the lies in the 3 that make up religious Christianity, symbolized by the gold, silver, and brass in the image associated with the king of Babylon, symbolizing the spirit of confusion. Let's look at some of these lies, starting with the one created by the head of the Christian religion. The fundamental lie of the Catholic Church doctrine is that Jesus is God. Iniquity created in the mind through the words, Holy Mary, Mother of God. When one accepts that Jesus is God, one is removing the Son, which, symbolizing the Word of God, is the works of creation. The Christian religion rejects the Son by rejecting the spiritual works through which our new spiritual creation comes into existence. As there were 6 days of works in the creation of our physical heaven and earth, not to be taken literally, there are 6 metaphorical days of spiritual works in the creation of our spiritual heaven and earth, which the Son, Jesus, spoke of and demonstrated for us while he was on this earth. The Jesus is God lie which has been preventing this creation, was formed into a full-blown image by the third power in religious Christianity, symbolized by the brass, a false image formed by using only 2 verses of the Bible, John 1:1 and 10:30. The first, a mistranslation, the second, a misunderstanding, both responsible for perpetuating the primordial lie. When Jesus said he and his Father are one, the Jews took up stones to throw at him. Jesus asked them, "For what good works that I showed you from my Father are you stoning me?" They replied that it was not for good works, but because he made himself equal with God. Jesus never said he was God. Jesus was saying that he and his Father were one with respect to the works of creation, as God's physical creation is the pattern or instruction for the spiritual creation that comes into existence within us when we finish the spiritual works, which is why Jesus instructs us to believe the works, the word believe meaning to obey or put action to. In believing that Jesus is God, they do not see the Son, and they do not see the Son because they have not done the works. And they have not done the works because they believe the teachings of Paul, building upon the wrong foundation. Paul teaches that one can be saved by the grace that comes through faith, that salvation is a gift, not something you have to work for, eliminating the works. Jesus teaches us just the opposite, teaching that salvation is our reward for doing the works. A reward is not a gift. A reward is something one receives in recompense for worthy behavior, for good works. What is a gift is the spiritual power through which we do the spiritual works that result in our salvation. Faith without works is dead, being alone, spoken by James, the brother of our Lord, one of the 12 pillars in the true foundation. So yes, salvation comes by faith, but not in the way Christians have been taught to think about it. Paul teaches another lie when he says that we can be changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye. Christians can tell you the day they were born again and saved, but according to the teachings of Jesus and the prophet Isaiah, they are not born again, and neither are they saved, which according to the prophet Jeremiah, they will come to know. The era of Isaac, which began 2,000 years ago, gave birth to Jacob and Esau, representing 2 ways: the way of Jesus and the way of Paul, the way of spirituality and the way of religion. The instruction given us by Jesus comes through Jacob, who was called Israel. That instruction is to judge the 12 tribes of Israel. And Jesus said unto them, Verily I say unto you, that ye which have followed me, in the regeneration, when the Son of Man shall sit in the throne of his glory, ye also shall sit upon 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Matthew 19:28. The biblical meaning of the word regeneration is spiritual rebirth. The word generate meaning to bring into existence. Those that are in the process called the regeneration are metaphorically sitting on 12 thrones, judging these tribes, which are neither lost nor extinct, but existing within in the form of positive and negative aspects. We are to judge the negative aspects, which is to overcome them through spiritual works, through which our new heaven and earth is brought into existence. Our first heaven and first earth passing away through the process. Revelation 21:1. This process is encoded in the 49th chapter of Genesis, through which we give birth to the spiritual Son, giving birth to truth from within our heart. The instruction given to us by the teacher of the first revelation is to travel from Ru to Ben, from Reuben to Benjamin. Jacob's first son, Reuben, means see ye a son, visualization, which is of the mind. Jacob's last son, Benjamin, means son of the right hand symbolizing power, the actualization of the Son, which is of the heart, when we give birth to truth in our heart. Spiritual rebirth, like our new spiritual creation, is a process revealed to us through the sons of Jacob. Then we have religion, which teaches that Jacob stole Esau's birthright, which is a lie. Esau forfeited his birthright for red pottage, a teaching of the first revelation. The red pottage translates to dangerous arrogance. Christians have unwittingly chosen Esau by accepting the born-again lie, an arrogant belief that has caused them to forfeit their right to a spiritual birth, which they would have received through the regeneration by following Jesus' instruction. Our government has also chosen Esau, forfeiting our right to freedom. Esau, who dwells in Seir, is Edom, Genesis 36:8. Esau and Seir share the same meaning, which is rough. The word Edom means red. How rough is it going to have to get before we start doing the spiritual works that will enable us to take back our country out from under the red nation that it is currently being handed over to? When we give power to a government that will rule us with an iron hand, we give power to a religion that will rule us with great oppression. This is where we are headed if we do not get back to the spiritual principles upon which America and true Christianity were founded. We can't have a refounding of America without a refounding of Christianity.